I know we've only known each other for 4 weeks and 3 days, but to me, it seems like 9 weeks and 5 days.
All right. Here we are. Welcome, everyone. It's the Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show right here on the Urban Gardener channel. And I'm Enoch. I'm your host today. And we've got a really great show for you today. I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this show for quite a while. So I'm really excited to bring you today a great conversation about horticultural therapy today for our garden roundtable here on the Sunday edition. We're welcoming back to the show our good friend Alicia DeVore from Create My Garden and her professor, Derrick Stowell, PhD from the University of Tennessee, is joining with us today, again, to talk all about this really important profession of horticultural therapy. Man, I'm really excited about getting into this. You know how much I love talking about how our gardens heal. So this is going to be a really wonderful conversation. You'll want to stay tuned a little bit later in the show for this roundtable. And again, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining with me today. It's always great to have you here with us. And if you can, right at the top of the show there, definitely hit that thumbs up. Click the like button as well as subscribe and hit the bell notification so you'll be notified of all of our upcoming videos and live streams right here on the Urban Gardener channel, as well as share with all your friends. Let them know about all the great things that we have growing on here on the Let's Get Growing show each and every Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. British Summer Time as well, too, for all of those of you joining with us. Thank you so much for being here. And one little caveat to being here every Saturday and Sunday. We'll talk about that just a little bit later in the show, too. So again, a huge shout out to all of you who are watching us on the replay. I really appreciate you taking your time to join with us when you can to catch up with what we got growing on here on the show today. Again, like I said, we've got a great show ahead for you. Drop into the comment section below. Definitely let me know you're here. Let me know what you got growing on. Let me know what you think of the show. And if you got any suggestions for any guests or anything you'd like to see, love to hear from you in the comments. I also mentioned this yesterday that commenting is huge. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate all of you who take that extra time to get down into the comment section and leave comments in our live streams and videos, again, because it's a big part of how we grow as channels and shows and things that we're doing here on YouTube. And when you guys take that extra time to throw in comments down below, that really helps us get seen by everybody else. And that goes as with the thumbs up and all that other stuff. All those interactions tell the YouTube algorithm to show us to more people. So really get down there and drop in some comments. I love to hear from all of you out there. And if you are here with us live, though, too, definitely drop into our chat there as well, too, and let us know that you're here. Let us know what you got growing on and where you're growing from. And especially if you haven't jumped into the chat before, let us know that you're here for sure. We all want to hear from you. And if you do have any questions or comments, especially for our guests coming up here later in the show, I want to hear some questions of the guests that we have. Drop those in the chat, put them in big, bold capital letters so that we can see those questions from the regular conversation. So definitely great to have you all here. Thank you so much. And links down below to all of our guests and our other social media. You want to go check that out. And another one of those things that you guys do that's extra and really cool that I really love is checking out those links for our guests and going over to their social media, find some posts, find a recent video or something, and go leave them a comment too. And let them know that you saw them here on the Let's Get Growing show. I really appreciate it when you guys do that. Thank you so much for that little extra effort to help us get the word out about our show. Thank you so much. Awesome. Again, too, great to have all of you here today with us for our Sunday edition of the show. Lots and lots of things growing on in the garden right now. I was out just walking around, and sort of like what I was talking about yesterday. As you can see, I kind of got a little bit of long sleeves on. We're towards the end of June here, and we're kind of going through kind of a crazy little weekend here in Southern Oregon that I haven't seen in the time I've been here. But we talked about it yesterday. My good friend, our good friend, actually here in the Sunday edition for sure, Mr. NBC and Mark Roche Colbert, put out a reel on his Instagram yesterday. I was watching, talking about our book club, and he mentioned this term that I hadn't heard for a while until I moved to since I lived up in the Seattle area of the Pacific Northwest, and that's January. Here down in the Southern Oregon, we're pretty warm. We're a lot warmer than those northern parts of the Northwest there. And I haven't seen a January since I lived up in Seattle, and we've got one. We've got one for sure this weekend. We've already gone through some 90s. We've had our first 100-degree days here already. So I was already acclimating to the warm weather and everything. And then all of a sudden, this cold front moves in, and I'm shivering. I'm in here. Yesterday it was cool in here, so I prepared today. Wore a long sleeve shirt, got myself make sure I'm a little bit warm today. But kind of a different little weather phenomenon for us here. But again, as we also learned yesterday with some of the our audience guests that we had. Many of them were over in the Midwest, where they're dealing with a big, huge heat dome right now, and lots of heat, which is kind of unusual for them in such a high degrees like they are experiencing right now. And so that's, it's just kind of interesting to see those different weather patterns that come and face us and bring us challenges throughout our garden season each and every year. And it's always different every year anymore. Mother Nature is throwing something at us constantly, but everything's going okay though. In fact, I think the plants out there and all that are enjoying this time right now. They're having no problem with it. They're liking it. Whereas those over in the Midwest, their plants are probably struggling to make it through the day, and they're out there making sure they're keeping them wet and all that sort of stuff too. But over here, this little cool patch is kind of is okay. The garden is looking great out there, and I was just out looking and maybe thinking about whether or not I'm actually going to start digging up my garlic. You know what I mean? There's a different, it's kind of that time of year, kind of depending on when we planted, how much, development they've had, all that sort of stuff. But I've been kind of noticing those bottom leaves of my garlic are starting to brown off. I've got about 2 or 3 of them now, and that's usually kind of our good sign that, the plants are getting ready for harvest, and the outer, those leaves, which are basically the outer shell of that bulb, are drying up now. So that's creating, a little protective layer there to our bulb of garlic. So they're about ready to come on out. So I'm thinking about doing that maybe today or something as well too. I'm not sure. We'll figure that out as we get moving forward. And as I mentioned to our guests before we started the show, I've kind of had a day over the last 24 hours, and I don't really usually get on it, and I'm not going to go on about the personal issues I'm dealing with and going through and all that sort of stuff, but things can get kind of heavy, and they've been feeling a little heavy the last 24 hours. So really, it's great timing for our show today to talk with our guests today and all of that. But I'm going to need a little horticultural therapy myself after this show. I'm probably going to either go dig up those garlic out of the ground, or I'm going to just go start pulling some weeds. You know what I mean? Weed pulling is a good way to deal with some of the frustrations and things that we're dealing with in our lives. And it's a good thing the garden gives us plenty of that to do. And so definitely going to get out and do that today, because I need a little bit of horticultural therapy, like I was saying, for sure. And of course, I am here trying to get this going, because I should have get this prepared just a little bit more. Oh, let's make sure I got that right, actually. Oh no. It's the fun of running a live show, you guys, from the fun of running a live show. So here we go. Talking about pulling weeds, we do got our friend Paul from Guten Gardening joining with us today for our In the Garden segment today. As you all know, we've been changing things up. Mr. NBC's usually been our In the Garden guy, and he still is. second and third Sunday of the month, but our first and fourth Sundays of the month, we've got our good friend David from Bowtie Life in the Garden, and today Paul from Guten Gardening joining with us for In the Garden, talking about weeding.
I'm Paul from Guten Gardening, and today I'm very excited to welcome you to our garden. I'm also very excited to be joined.
Sorry.
Guten Gardening, everybody. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of my Zone 5 garden here in southern Wisconsin. I'm going to show you what we've got growing so far here in the middle of June. Now, while my primary focus is going to be on that garden tour, there is something I want to talk about, and that is weeding. Now, we're going to start our garden tour today here with some of our garlic, which is looking great, and actually our hardneck garlic here in the back. You can see one of my favorite aspects of the hardneck garlic, which is all of these garlic scapes. And I did grow a little bit more, and certainly more varieties of garlic this year than I have in the past, in part because we got a new selection of garlic from Woodprey Family Farms. And since garlic is one of those longer lasting products and we use it almost daily, this is something we wanted to have more of this season. So you can see this year I've got garlic growing in the raised beds here, different raised beds in containers. And so we're hoping to get our biggest garlic harvest ever. Now, to talk about weeds today, I'm going to go to our primary in-ground gardening area. And actually, I'm going to start right behind the garden space where we have our onions growing, because this is an area where you can really see part of the issue with weeds in our back area that we're dealing with. You can see some of the varieties are common varieties. And so some of them, if you wanted to, you could eat. Does anybody know what this one is? I've actually done a video on this one. Some of them, if processed, and I'm not going to touch this stinging nettle, you can also make a stinging nettle tea out of. If you wrote down lamb's quarter, you got it right. But what you see here are some of the really common plants that grow, really common weeds that grow that can take over a space just so quickly. You know, about 2 weeks ago, I came out here and I cleared out all these weeds. And unfortunately, I hadn't been able to get back in here and really take care of these weeds the way I want to. And so what I'm seeing is, even in our primary garden space, actually I'll go down to this end of our garden space because you'll see it down here as well. In addition to some beautiful plants in here, I've got a ton of weeds down in this area that seem to pop up almost overnight. And I actually just discovered a hole in my fence over here. And the reason I discovered that hole, looks like one of my S clips has fallen off, is because I saw some rabbits in here. So I got to take care of that, or else the rabbits will come in and they'll eat up everything. So I'm going to come back here with my onions and show you I've started to do some work cleaning out this area, cleaning out the weeds in here. I've got hours of work left to do. Now, I believe all gardeners have to deal with weeds to some extent, but when you butt up to marshland, which is what I have right behind me here, an area that I can't do anything with, I have to deal with all of these plants out here going to seed and then spreading back into my garden. Now, there are a couple of different ways that we've handled our weeds here in the past, and most of the ways that we handle weeds have the additional benefit of helping to preserve some of the moisture in the soil, especially as we get farther into the end of June, into July, when the rain seems to be a little less frequent than it is at this time of year, again, here in Zone 5, Wisconsin. And so the first step is going to be to take care of the weeds, to get the weeds out of the way. And when we're talking about weeds around, say, the onions that you just saw, I'm going to have to get in there by hand because I can't really do anything. You know, they're a little too close together for me to do anything else. So I get in there and I pull them out by hand. But for the main garden space, where I have a little bit more space in between most plants, I'll show you my way of getting rid of the weeds in the first place and then we'll talk about trying to prevent them and again preserving some of the moisture in the soil.
This area of the garden that has some broccoli and some pepper plants, these are actually habanero peppers, and some tomato over here by the trellising. I'm using one of my favorite tools. I've talked about this in previous videos. This is the Stirrup-hoe, and what I love about the Stirrup-hoe, I'm gonna be careful with my plants here, is that I can get in here and knock these weeds off right at the top without moving a ton of my soil around. So I'm not having to come back through and re-level everything out. I think this one cost me 25, 30 bucks. We certainly have other ones. You can get up pretty close to the plants as well. Get real close to my vegetables. If there are some that are right by the plant, maybe I want to come in by hand. But that is a really easy way to knock these weeds down.
Now what I could do is just repeat that process every week or week and a half or so. As new weeds come in, I get in there and I clear them out. Now there are plenty of other options for what you can do. We got a double shredded mulch a couple years ago. It wasn't too expensive. Actually, it was on the cheaper end of mulches. And from a local company, we got some double shredded mulch, and we spread about an inch thick layer across our garden space, and that made a huge difference. And it was double shredded, and it actually decomposed pretty quickly. So that's one of the things you can do. In the past, we've also spread a fairly thin layer of hay across the surface. Hay does a great job of holding moisture in. I mean, that's why our root stout bed doesn't even really need to be watered, because over the course of the season, it captures rain really well. Hay or straw works really nicely as a mulch. One thing with hay, you do want to make sure it's one of the later cuts if you can, to try to prevent additional seeds, because that can be problematic as well. But today, instead of hay, I'm actually going to be putting down a thin layer of grass. We just mowed yesterday. I've got some fresh grass in here, and I'm going to be spreading this out in a thin layer. Now, I don't want to make this too thick, although to be fair, the plants are really nicely established now, but I don't love the matting that happens or can happen with grass. I don't have this mulched up or anything like that. I just have a standard mower. But we found that grass does a really nice job also trying to keep that weed presence down.
And I'm just going to create a thin layer around my plants. Again, I'm not trying to do anything except help hold moisture in. There we go, just like that. Help hold moisture in and keep the weeds down, because if I can prevent that additional piece of work, and I've talked about this before, but gardening takes a good bit of efforting, a good bit of work out here. And if you're adding work to yourself by constantly having to come take care of weeds, as much as I find taking care of weeds to be cathartic to a point, I have other things that I need to get done as well. And what I'm spreading out right now has only taken a small portion of one bag of our trimmings, our clippings. Yeah, that's going to be a huge difference maker, because as I walk along here, you can see what I'm going to be dealing with if I don't do this. These tomato plants, I got some Roma. These are Roma here. I got giant crimson, the rare giant crimson down here. A lot of kale this year, a lot of broccoli, cauliflower, or parsley right along here, but you can see how much the weeds are trying to really navigate into my garden, and I want to do whatever I can to prevent that from being a big issue. Again, I just cleared this out a week ago, and I've got bigger weeds that are going to come in. And the other piece of this that I think is so important to remember is, you know, I'm looking at my onions in the back there, but the weed competition means smaller vegetables overall, smaller plants. And I want these to be successful. Oh, you can see the rabbits came and ate a couple of my, these are butter beans. Ate a couple of the plants right off the top there. But you can see how even, I mean, my peppers over here, you can barely see them because all this lamb's quarter here, that's all lamb's quarter, is just spreading so much. And as edible and delicious as I find lamb's quarter to be, that's not what I'm trying to grow in this part of the garden. So even if until I mow again, I have to miss part of our garden space, part of it covering over here, I'm definitely going to hit this corner of the garden
with that grass to make a big difference. So the area where we've just come from on this tour, this is our main garden area where I'm doing the weeding, a lot of that work. I come around my house to the root stout bed, and up this corner we've got our longest raised bed of potatoes. Everything's looking so nice. You know, a lot of these seed potatoes came in from Wood Prairie Family Farm this year. Some of the seed potatoes are ones that we kept over from last year. You see how deep the taproot goes on some of these. I really got to get that weed competition out of here for sure. I've walked along the western side of my house, so you can see the grapes here that I was just underneath, some of the berry bushes, all of our potatoes here. This is my favorite spot in our entire garden. I love this archway so much. I love the grapes that we've trellised over top. You know, we've got a lot growing here in our garden space, in our green stalks, etc. I've got a couple more beds here that I just tilled up. I'm ready to plant right here in the front space. I've taken out the weeds. I've still got to do this bed. I mean, again, when you're growing in a space like this, the weeds will try to reclaim a bed so quickly, and I haven't done anything with this bed yet. So, you know, once I take care of it, it's going to look just like these beds, or the bed here where I've got more broccoli growing, some more Romanesco broccoli, kale. That's our red Russian again right there. I think this would actually be a really cool place to end, right where we started, or right near where we started, because I haven't shown you two things. One would be our snap peas, and I have a couple different varieties. I just filmed a video yesterday when this particular pea was probably half the size it is now. They grow so quickly. You see all my peas here, and I've got some, let's look in here, there they are, some purple ones as well, which taste so good. And I have to show you this potato area. I've got 4 containers of very vigorous growing potatoes here, 4 varieties that I'm not going to talk about today, but 4 of our favorites. And then our Sharpo Una and Sharpo Mira potatoes in our keyhole raised bed, which I am so excited for. The Sharpo Miras are phenomenal, and this is our first year with the Sharpo Una variety. Now there's plenty more I could show you that's growing here. Our raspberries are starting to look like berries finally. There's a whole lot more that I could talk about, but I think that's where I'm going to end it today. I hope that our conversation around weeding and what we're using here to cover the ground to mulch things in a little bit is useful. I think there are definitely some pretty inexpensive ways to do the mulching that'll prevent some of the problems with weed development in the future, and certainly again help to preserve some of the moisture in the soil, which I would consider to be really important. And I talked about this, but only briefly. You know, every single plant that grows in the same space as the vegetable that you want to grow is going to compete for nutrients with your plant. And so not taking care of the weeds is going to end up resulting in a plant that's not as healthy or not as good of a producer as you want. And so that's why I would say it's important to stay on top of it. And I know nobody likes to show off the weeds in their garden. I know that's certainly not a big focus for people who put their content on YouTube, but that's the reality of gardening, and it's something we have to address. Thank you once again to Let's Get Growing for allowing us to share this video with all of you. I wish you all the best. Have a great month.
Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV. Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits. Hello. Oh boy, I'm having some fun today. I'm telling you, all sorts of issues here with this little studio going on today. All right. Thank you, though, to Paul for doing our In the Garden segment this week. So awesome to show us. And again, too, nobody wants to show off their weeds, but great of you to do that and help us look at how we can take care of some weed issues in our garden. Thank you so much, Paul, for sharing again today. Really awesome to see you. And again, everybody, lots and lots of great things growing on here on the show. As I talked about yesterday, we're talking with lots of different guests. In fact, yesterday's show, the guest was you. Yeah, you, the audience. We've been doing this over this last year, and this has just been incredibly fun. Our community shows. This is where we invite you, the audience, to be the guest on the show. You know, like one of those call-in radio shows, except for you got to hook up your video and come on with us and talk with us and everything. And I think we've done this 3 or 4 times now. This has just been really fun, really awesome to let all of you, the audience, come and join us on the show and talk about your gardens. And I know a lot of you too also are small channels. And this is a big thing that we're emphasizing on this community show too now, is that you know, it's a great way for smaller channels to get a chance and an opportunity to come on and talk about their channel, talk about what they've got growing on, and be able to, you know, get the word out about what they're doing and everything too. So we've been having a lot of fun with doing this, and I'm going to look forward to future dates in our calendar to see about getting and doing more of these as we grow through the season. So look forward to more of those community shows, especially those of you out there who have small channels. And if you do know folks out there who do have small channels and would love a moment to get on a show and talk about their channels and what they've got growing on with their content and everything, let them know. Let them know that we got a community show. We'll get the word out on our next one, and we'll invite everybody back on. It's really great. We're so lucky to have some of these just amazing guests each and every week that we get here on the show. I mean, so fortunate some of the conversations we're able to have here with the guests that we have. But I've been really enjoying having fun conversations with you guys with this community show. I think it's been probably, next to our book club, probably one of our more fun things that we've added on to the show in this last year for sure. And if you didn't get a chance to check out last Saturday's show, you want to come and check that out. We had a great conversation with our most often returning featured guest on the show, Mr. Farmer Greg Peterson from the Urban Farm Podcast was with us. And again, always great to talk with him as well. We got to meet Graylin from Urban Gardening with Gray. Really great channel, really great stuff he's got growing on for sure. You'll definitely want to go back and check out our last Saturday show for that as well too. And I mentioned too, last week was our third Sunday of the month. And the third Sunday of the month, we do our Let's Get Growing Monthly Gardening Book Club with our good friend, Mr. MBC, Mark Boucher Colbert. And this last month, we were featuring the book, The Food Forward Garden by Christian Douglas. We had Christian Douglas on. And again, this is one of the great things about our book club. You want to come and join along with us every third Sunday of the month, is that not only do we review and read all of these really great books, but we get the authors to come on and join with us on the show to talk about their books. And again, last month's book was The Food Forward Garden, a complete guide to designing and growing edible landscapes. And you want to hang out for the end of those book club shows, because we announced the next month's book club feature. And this next month, we are featuring Bill Thorness's Cool Season Gardener. So on the third week of July, we're going to hang out with Bill Thorness on our book club and Mr. NBC to talk all about cool season gardening with Bill Thorness and this really great book. So you'll definitely not want to miss out on that show coming up as well too. Right on, everybody. Let's get moving on today. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now. So it's time for our Sunday Roundtable. All right. So let's welcome to the show, of course, returning to the show, our good friend Alicia DeVore.
Hello.
Hey there. Oh, I'm telling you, I'm having a challenge with all my buttons today. Great. Alicia, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Absolutely.
Really great to have you here. Make sure I hit this right and get Mr. Derrick Stowell, joining us from University of Tennessee. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's so great to have both of you here to talk about this, just like I said, just really, really important subject in gardening. So again, thank you so much for being here.
And so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And first off, we'll throw it to you, Alicia, real quick, and let you guys introduce yourselves to everybody out there. Let us know about what you're doing and what you got growing on, and all of that, and we'll get this conversation rolling.
That sounds great. Thanks. I started a business a few years ago called Create My Garden, and I do have a small YouTube channel and a little bit going on Instagram, but my shift has been more on horticultural therapeutic practices and how can gardening actually be implemented for senior living homes and therapy spaces and children with special needs, foster care, that kind of a thing, because it has brought so much healing in my own heart. So it was a natural extension of understanding the garden, understanding how to help people garden, and now how can we help our hearts through that process. So I'm kind of taking a space to see where I'm supposed to go next in this arena. But in the meantime, I went ahead and finished a certification program with Derrick Stowell, who was my professor for the last year, and finished that up at the University of Tennessee. And then I just finished 2 weeks ago my certification in horticulture through UCLA, which has taken me about 2.5 years. So both of those are in place, and now enjoying having some time. I went to a senior living home on Friday and I did a workshop, and I have worked with the therapy space for the last 3 years for OT, speech, and PT, helping therapists use their huge garden that I helped put together and create with their clients, which my son is one of them. So I have an autistic son who is 16, and he has benefited from the garden, benefited from others knowing how to use the garden and helping his own therapy.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, not only a student of these practices and everything, but really living that life as well too, which is great. Why I thought it was really awesome that we need to have this conversation. We were talking all that time back ago, is a lot of this stuff is just really, really important. And thanks to folks like you, Derrick, too, who are out there teaching and helping push this profession out there. Tell us a little bit more about yourself there.
Sure, yeah. And so my name is Derrick Stowell. I work at the University of Tennessee Gardens and also teach the Horticultural Therapy certificate program for the university. And I've been here at the UT Gardens for almost 14 years. And I came to the gardens teaching garden education. So I was just doing general education to the public. And through my professor or my boss, my supervisor at the time, I learned about horticultural therapy as a profession. I have a master's degree in recreational therapy. So when I started looking at the horticultural therapy profession, there was so many similarities of how horticultural therapy and recreational therapy work together that I went back to school and got some additional training and became a registered horticultural therapist. And we started our programs here at the gardens. And so we've been doing these programs for, again, almost 14 years. And we work a lot. Some of it was by chance. We had several assisted living facilities who had recreational therapists that went through the program at UT, and they contacted me and wanted to come out and do some tours. And I was like, oh, let's start some programs. And so we just saw a need, and we started filling that need for those groups. We ended up developing a travel program because it was just really logistically difficult for particularly folks who have dementia to get on a bus and have the right number of staff and safely come to our program. So we pack up, we travel with a folding wagon and potting trays, and we put it in our cars and drive to these facilities and do programming there. And from there, we've developed other programs over the years working with veterans. And right now we're finishing up our Sow to Grow program, which is a program it's a vocational program for teens who have disabilities. And so we're teaching them about horticulture, about social skills and job skills, and helping them connect with each other and using horticulture as that output.
Yeah. again, too, so many, and the more I look at it, it's just the avenues to which that horticultural therapy can be, used is just there's so many different directions, and as I've talked to, as I mentioned to you before the show, and Alicia and I have talked about before, is that one of my first getting to see this sort of thing in action, horticultural therapy and what it can really do for folks, was my aunt. Back in my early 20s, I used to go visit my aunt at this adult care facility, and used to go by and see her, because she was just so near, and we lived in the city away from most of the main part of our family. So I wanted to kind of be there and connect with her a lot as I learned she was in this facility. But one of the things I remember the most is I'd go and visit her. Every single time she would take me to go see her garden space. And they had this really cool garden space. And she was in this, she had a really high sense of like issues, in a sense, you know what I mean? Like, with the whole world, very angry, a lot of certain things going on and everything, which is how I knew her personality before I got to go and see her there, right? So when I first went to meet her, I didn't know what to expect. But then she's like, hey, because she remembered me from when I was a little baby, you know what I mean? So she's like, oh wow, she wants to show me, come see this garden. Was the very first thing she did. She showed me carrots that are growing up and different things that are coming out of the garden. And I was like, wow, this is not the person that everybody was gearing me up to meet, you know what I mean, when I first met her, right? And that became a thing. Every time I would go see her, we would go and check in and on that garden. And really, I look at it as probably one of my really first food growing gardening experiences, was just going to hang out with her and have her show me around her garden and all that sort of stuff and give her that time. It wasn't until years later, until I was in my own situation, dealing with my own problems in my life. I lost a loved one big time, and that hurt really bad. And I found myself, processing this as I was out in my garden. And I was really getting into gardening up until that point. But boy, oh boy, did I just throw myself into it. You know what I mean? Because I needed something and a way to kind of deal with this. And man, it was at that point in time, I was just everything. And again, too, I say this all the time too. This is another thing I say on the show a lot, is that when people get to this point in gardening, when things happen to them at this point in gardening, I think this is when things kind of seal the deal and you become a lifetime gardener now. Like, you're never going to stop. This is just because that's what goes on. And that's what I was feeling at that point, was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm really feeling this healing aspect of the garden. And then I related it back to these first times with my aunt, and getting to hang out with her and all that stuff. And it was just so profound, just this sense of thought about how and all of that sort of stuff works. And it was just kind of centered on me and centered on this sort of stuff and my initial thoughts about that stuff, until I started really looking into it more as I started exploring gardening more, and the idea of horticultural therapy came up. And I was just kind of like, wow, this is just like, really, this is something that, and I started reading more about it. And again, I don't want to keep going on and on here, because I want to hear from you guys about this sort of stuff and everything too. And maybe, again, some more of your more things that maybe you've dealt with in your life as well too, that have led to some of this understanding. And especially Derrick, really, what led you ultimately yourself to this, this profession, this idea of horticultural therapy?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing is just that, those observations that you mentioned just there are the exact same thing I hear from people over and over again. And that's kind of how the profession started. People started recognizing, hey, something's here. And then we had people starting to research it and trying to put numbers to that. But, that anecdotal connection is what people see. And sometimes, for those of us that just garden and we're not, in a therapy setting, it's not just gardening. There is a therapeutic aspect of that being outside, being in nature, the physical activity, taking care of something outside of just ourselves. And those are the things that people see, and they started figuring out, well, why is this? What makes this happen? What is the mechanism behind that? And for me personally, how I got involved was, and it really came from my connection with nature. In high school, I spent a lot of time outside, hiking, volunteering on the Appalachian Trail. I spent almost every day in my summers in high school up in the mountains doing something. And I realized the value that is had to me, and I wanted to share that with other people. And so that's kind of how that was my long journey from high school through becoming a horticultural therapist. But now it's like the way I look at that is, as a horticultural therapist, my role is to help show people and connect them to nature through gardening and horticulture, because we can do that anywhere. Not everybody has access to, I live 25 minutes from the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Not everybody in the country has access to that kind of incredible place, but everybody can grow something either in a pot, in a container inside, or even, a small lot outside, a 5-gallon bucket. And so we can bring nature wherever we're at, and we can get those healing benefits of taking care and growing those plants.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, too, you mentioned your son, Alicia, again, personal aspects for you, ultimately. Was that really what led you, or were you already kind of on that path already, or?
Well, as a homeschooling mom for the last 18 years, I have had adopted kids. I've fostered, and we've had one bio kid. And so having the diversity of all the different things coming in our home, gardening quickly became something I was really bad at, learned how to do better, and then realized I needed it desperately with my cup of coffee every morning. I needed to go outside. I needed to have a space and a time where I could pray and I could talk to God. And that was like the only safe space. And at the time we were living in Los Angeles in a very tiny space. My husband was working from home. We lived in the smallest house possible. And we had all of these things happening where I had a lot of kids from a lot of wounded places. And I needed a place where I could have a space to not be wounded, but instead just breathe and know that I could make it to the next time or moment. So when I started realizing how important it was for my heart to walk outside and to breathe and to look at something green, whether it was growing beautifully or not, whether I was watching the beginning of this season or an ending of the season. And that was almost all of it too, was that I needed to see the seasonality of something, because as a mom, you're at home or I'm homeschooling, there was no end to the homeschooling. We homeschooled all year just to get a little bit in every day, like I needed to have a space where there was a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I could breathe and sigh and start fresh anew for the next season. So for me, that has been extremely influential in how I do life every day. Is I have to get out in the garden. Oftentimes my kids don't even want to go outside with me, which actually is such a relief. I'll have to go pick blueberries today by myself and enjoy that moment in the time and watching all the birds and the bees and the pollinators and enjoy that. And those are my little moments. Other times my autistic son, who is somewhat verbal, but has just turned 16 and has a lot of hormones going on and a lot of things that he can't explain or can't understand or can't express to me. He'll come out and he'll hold the chickens. We had chickens in LA. I now live in Northern California and I'm on an acre and I have a lot of fruit trees and a lot of things growing in 14 different beds. And he enjoys his chickens and he goes out, and that's the time that he knows mommy. He has full access to mommy. He can talk to me and I'm singing to him. I'm talking to him. And I don't care if he has anything back to give me. We're just out there together.
Yeah. Again, really awesome and special moments and a great example again of how these spaces can really influence, our day-to-day lives. And one of the big aspects of just us normal gardeners, is just, the day-to-day lives we live anymore. So fast paced, the world's crazy, all the sort of stuff's going on and all of that. So just for us regular gardeners out there, dealing with the regular, pitfalls of life and all that sort of stuff, a garden can be a great place to escape. But in some senses, and what we're here talking about really is, it can be it can be really an important escape, a great place for healing. Well, not just escaping, I guess is the point, right? This is healing. This is a connection with nature that really, for, like you said, your autistic son is probably at times just really having a hard time and just really kind of just doesn't know what to do, this and that, but grabs hold of a chicken and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, or gets his hand in the dirt and starts playing with some plants, and then things just kind of slow down and things really help out, to be able to deal with in those sort of anxieties, right?
Yeah, being out in the sun,
The sun,
being
yeah.
out where there's air,
Mhm.
the trees. I mean, Derrick, you have shown me all the different research through our
Yeah, yeah.
certification class of what does green do for people? Like, can you help illustrate a few of those things that
Yeah,
you find are most impactful?
Perfect. Thanks,
yeah.
Alicia.
So I think for us, as a program person, I'm thinking like this stuff like Alicia talks about that's why I do it. I want to see the change in the people, but we also have to research that to say why. And one of a study that we use a lot, we talk a lot about pivotally with our profession, was a study done in the 80s by Roger Ulrich, and he studied patients in hospitals that had surgery. And he looked at patients that once after the surgery, they got placed in a room that looked out at trees and green, and other patients that looked out on windows that faced brick walls. And that study found that the patients that looked at the green, the nature, the trees, healed faster after the surgery, used less pain medicine post-surgery, had higher satisfaction scores. So he really was able to begin to quantify simply looking at plants has a huge verifiable, significant impact on our health. And so those are some studies that we've seen. There's been other studies out there looking at things like stress and working with people that are going through PTSD and therapy, and showing that a garden can help connect them. And like one of the studies, they were looking at trauma, and they went out and they did garden work for 30 minutes, I believe, and then they went in and did psychotherapy sessions. And they found that there was the participants that did the gardening were more prepared and ready to kind of deal with that really deep and heavy therapeutic thing going on in that more formal treatment. With veterans, we see reduction of stress and anxiety and depression by going out and gardening. We did a study 1 year in our gardens, and we worked with veterans, and we did I think it was a 6 or 8 week program, and they were coming several times a week, and we go out in the garden, do some gardening. We then do debriefing, so we talk about that, and we make that connection to ourselves. And these veterans, and this was shocking. I worked with a counselor who did research with veterans on this project, and the first session we got done at the end, and I started debriefing it, and the floodgates opened, just talking about what it's like to be in the military, the stress, the trauma, and super, super deep stuff. And it really did blow me away. And the counselor's like, that's because they're in the garden, and that's because you facilitated some of that. But really, it's that garden connection. It's a safe place. We can be in an urban setting, and there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of noise, a lot of risky things. But when a garden, we see that as humans as a place of sanctuary and a place of safety, and the research shows that.
And like the affective filter is down. When we take people outside, there's something that happens that allows them to hear each other more and to connect with one another. And I think one of the biggest things with just any type of therapy is connecting with our own hearts, right? Like listening to our hearts, and then being able to listen to other people, I think is so powerful in that example, Derrick.
Yeah. And I think, we're talking a lot about this is, with technology, we're really removed from outside in nature. People are connected to phones, and we don't know. And this is with a lot of traditional college students, I guess what they'd say, those right out of high school. But, a lot of these students don't know how to interact with people. They don't know how to talk face to face, be in person. And a horticulture kind of program or a therapeutic program with horticulture can impact that. I know there's a study in University of Florida that's done, and they're working on publishing it, showing that working with college students in this therapeutic horticulture setting has impacts on their wellness and their academic resiliency. Again, people are lonely. with social media and iPhones and smartphones, it's a lonely world. Even though we seem like we're connected better, we're really not. And so I think that's where I love what horticultural therapy can do is you can get people in a garden and start talking, and you can have this real deep connection with somebody that you wouldn't have online.
Yeah. Yeah, and then again too, and these are again we're talking when I was mentioning these different avenues. I find it so fascinating in all these different places. You're talking about vets, and we know the kind of traumas that they go through and that sort of stuff, and to be able to see and hear these sort of things that you're talking about through their connection with the garden, and them being able to connect with them and themselves and their experience better is just I mean, that's phenomenal, really. You know what I mean? And here's the thing that I'm wondering, because I know I'm just remembering back to Alicia, one of our initial conversations on this stuff, is that this profession isn't really taken that seriously, is it?
Derrick, tell us what we need to do as a community
this is something that's
to make
because
this something.
Yeah. So
we as gardeners know. I'm sorry, we as gardeners know through experience, and there's millions of us out there who have this experience and know this. We can see this, and folks like yourself, and just already in just the few minutes we've talked about some serious things that can be helpful to people who really, really need that sort of stuff. But yet, from what I hear all the time, is that wait a minute, we can't get this sort of therapy in the professional sphere.
Yeah, and so our profession if we're looking at allied health professions in the United States, we are the youngest one. With the start of our professional association, is kind of like the newest one, and it's been around since the 70s. And so that is a challenge. There's not a lot of us. It is growing, and quite frankly, in the last 5 years, I've seen a lot of changes with the profession and more people coming into it. I think, and the reality is, I do feel like the pandemic and some of the things that we went through in that situation have helped spur this interest growth. So we're kind of on this, things go in waves, and I think we're on a rising wave with the number of interested students. But some of the questions, how are you taken seriously? And as a profession, if we're a healthcare profession, we need to think about training. What kind of training we have, what kind of standardization, what kind of research is being done, and all of those things. We do have a professional association, the American Horticultural Therapy Association. They have a professional registration system there's 2 levels right now. One is called a therapeutic horticultural practitioner. The other one is a horticultural therapist registered, or HTR. And in the healthcare world, you kind of have this system of you need to get trained, you need to do an internship, and then the next level up is a certification, which is like you have to take a national exam that's a standardized exam, and then the highest level is kind of like licensure, which is done by states. And so the profession kind of is doing that. We actually are in the middle of writing the questions for the certification exam right now. So within the next year, we're going to be launching that. And so that's a huge change for us. And what that does is, for you and me, we can talk about this all day long, and we know it and we get it. I have not talked to a single person, whether they're a gardener or not, about what I do when I talk about the details behind it, that has said that this is a dumb idea. Like everybody's like, oh, that makes sense. But in the healthcare world, if I come to them saying, I've got this professional registration, they're going to kind of not listen as much versus saying I'm certified, I have a national certification. And then if there was licensure, we would say that, and people listen to you. So medical doctors and those things. So that's one of the challenges we have, and we are moving through that. And so we have, like I said, the questions are being drafted as we speak, and we're going to have that up and running. And there's going to be some changes. The board is the association is looking at what's the qualification to sit for that exam, and so that's all. There's some membership is having some meetings coming up to kind of discuss some of those ideas. But yeah, that's the hard part. Also, we don't get third-party reimbursement, so which means that we have to pay out of pocket. We have to pay through donations or grants, and so that is hard. One state in Maryland does have a Medicaid waiver program where someone that's a HTR can be reimbursed for that, and they have reimbursement rates.
Oh yeah.
And so those are options that could happen at some point, but you're going to have a lot of people behind that to pass that kind of legislation.
Well, and the
Yeah.
first thing that needs to happen
Yeah.
is it needs to become an official profession in the United States.
Yeah.
That's the first space. It needs to be a profession. I can't believe it's not yet. Like, that's what we need to, the research that Derrick has been talking about, and more people putting in research, and the work that they have done to make it so official. It just needs to be in the forefront that this is something that goes alongside therapists and therapy. Like, this goes alongside in activating healing for people, for trauma, for OT, for speech, for physical therapy, for senior living homes. I mean, this is what is an avenue. It's the vehicle that could really be a useful thing in so many different professions. You know, you talk about like equine therapy. It's the same idea, but with gardens. So let's push that out there so that people can be a part of something that is so impactful. It just needs a space to get there.
Yeah, that's so true. And again, to this idea that and of course, and you make a great point though, that Derrick, that, you know, folks like us, we know, you know, that sort of thing, and we can see this seems kind of obvious type of thing, but for those in this larger sphere of professions and doctors, and basically what you know, in my mind, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I go to the idea that how much money is there to be made in horticultural therapy? You know, there's no drugs to be given to people, you know what I mean? There's you know, that's, you know, we're teaching people to grow some plants or interact with nature and that sort of stuff, you know, which is a practically free thing, you know, in some senses. You know, I mean, we can do some budget gardening, and gardening can get expensive. I don't want to go there either, but you know what I mean? But in the long run, it's something that we can really easily access without having to go to some pharmacy somewhere and get something that was, you know, this and that. And maybe, and I don't want to also get in and be a doctor either myself and say that people don't need medications either. But maybe this is something that needs to be taken serious as like alongside type of things that we're doing for patients out there, or other folks who are just dealing with larger anxieties in society or having mental health issues and stuff, you know.
Yeah, and I think there's a place for prevention. You know, that's one of the things we think about, you know, with the mental health crisis we have in this country. We don't have enough counselors for the amount of people that need treatment. And we've seen in the last few years shortage of medications, and, you know, question about whether this or that is working or not. You know, other herbal methods that are being used in certain states, you know, is that really effective? And so I think for one of the things is, how do we make this connection of, these things are also important, but this is preventative, so we can save money for insurance companies. And I'm pretty sure we can. I think we haven't done that kind of study. And also looking at how this can enhance the treatments that are people getting. You know, and like you mentioned, anybody can garden. I think that is maybe one of our hardest hurdles to overcome, is like, oh, I garden and I feel good. Yeah, that's great. But just like anybody, you know, I can be fine one day and something can happen, and then I need to get medical treatment, you know, and I need to go see a counselor, or I need to see a psychiatrist. I might need some medication, or I might need to go to a heart doctor because I have some blockages, right? So there's a continuum of, okay, let's maintain our health, and this is one way we can do that. And then also, this can also help us if we have poor health, and how to get us back to that state that we're trying to be in, of being as healthy as possible. So I think that's how, once we start finding a good way to quantify that, I think that also will help promote us and propel what we can do, because we can, just like that Ulrich study, you know, that's a cost savings. If you're using less pain medicine and you're getting out faster, you're saving the insurance company thousands of dollars. And so we need to be able to document that better.
Yeah, and I think just there in what you were saying, though, real quick, when you're talking about shortage of counselors and stuff, I was thinking, well, you know, how much does a garden cost to install? You know, I mean, if you can't get a counselor and you can't hire them and you can't find them or anything, go find a gardener and install a garden and see how that works. You know, it might even save some money.
Definitely. On Friday, when I was with the senior living home that I was helping with a workshop, we were doing a summer summer celebration, starting off with companion planting and helping understand how tomatoes and basils and marigolds go together. And I started asking the transition that we just did with summer. We just transitioned our garden into the summer. And then I asked in our little group, I'm like, what are some transitions? What are some things you have done in transitioning to moving here? Because many of the senior living residents had just moved in there within the last 4 to 6 months. And so they just opened up and started sharing. And just even knowing that someone else is going through a transition or had to go through a transition, and how hard it was for them to leave their gardens at their homes. How hard of it was it to leave their spaces and to come somewhere new? And what did they do? What strategies did they do to connect so that they could become stronger? And my heart was just broken for them. Just like, wow, thank you for sharing and thank you for being a part of this community. And we've just built their community space so they can make it one more day with some
Yeah.
joy and some happiness that they didn't have the day before, thinking they were separated and isolated.
Yeah. Wow. That's so great. Yeah. I'm more and more, and I just wonder again too, back on this idea though, is like, what could be some strategies in a sense to get people or something? Is this something like maybe, I don't know, we get out there, should we just be in there asking our personal doctors we have, should we just go into the doctor's office and say, hey, what do you think, man? Do you think I should, blah, 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 maybe to kind of maybe guide them a little bit, like, hey, wait a minute, this is working for me. Maybe this is something that could work for others. Maybe you should look into that or something like that. Just start from the ground level as gardeners and get our practitioners and physicians thinking about this stuff at that level? Or is it really a state level where we got to write into our representatives and our governors and things, and or medical boards and all that sort of stuff? What is the real strategy here to get folks to really take this as a serious profession and start putting some effort and money and things towards doing these things for other people?
I think I say all the above.
Really? Yeah.
You can look at some of the research that's coming out, and a lot of research is coming from countries in Asia, the Asian part of the world, China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, a lot of these countries over there. And why? The governments, one, you see a lot of cities that are these high density, high population cities. The government's like, there's something going on here and we need to fix this problem. I think don't quote me, I think it's Singapore, where they have a goal of having a green space within every so many yards or meters of everybody in the city. That's several million people. And so because they see that the need, and they're investing in that. And so right now that what we need to do is we need to get people that can invest in that. Looking at insurance companies, I think there are many foundations for insurance companies. Those people should want to invest in research to help save money. And I hate saying this, but if we can put dollars to this, and we can then get some other support to do it. Social prescribing, like you mentioned, go and talk. We
need some economists on this, don't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Some people to run some numbers, build some charts for us, start showing what this is and how it affects certain things and what possibilities there could be if all of that sort of stuff just makes so much sense. And it's so interesting too. You bring up that region of the world in this issue though right now too, is I just had another good friend of ours on the show, Jason Williams from over in Manchester, United Kingdom, and he was given a fellowship to go over to Singapore and China and these sort of places to go and look at urban green spaces and what they were doing and how they were able to accomplish the sort of things they were able to accomplish, and it's just so interesting that over there and how and why they're taking that stuff seriously, because in what he said was almost exactly what you said, Derrick, was that they saw a problem that their people were dealing with, and they went to look for what works. And what they found is that when you're, and again too, urban, it makes too much sense. You take away nature from people, and you're gonna start getting them high strung. You start throwing them into working jobs at 100 hours a week or whatever it is that they're doing. You know what I mean? You gotta be able to create stress relief in a society like that. And the fact that we over here for some reason or so, I don't know. I think maybe it comes back to dollars again, but we're so, I don't know, can't see that avenue as well as those folks over there are doing it. And it's just, it amazes me really.
Well, and you think of all the cement. They've got a
Yeah.
lot of cement. And so here they are finding spaces to add green. I think another area also that, like the garden I was at on Friday was in a local, senior living home. And they had 8 beautiful wood beds that were all compliant for wheelchairs and taller, and it was beautiful. And they had no one maintaining it except one resident who was in a wheelchair, who only had accessible one hand. The other hand he was not able to use. And he is the one that made the garden like refresh from weeds when he moved in a year before. And it was absolutely the most fascinating thing for me to see that this one man made such an impact. And now his purpose is to have flowers and veggies for the residents, and for the kitchen staff goes out there and gets fresh veggies and fresh herbs. And he's doing it on his own will. So I think something that we miss when we put a healing garden in, or when we want gardens for people, is that we don't have a maintenance plan. We don't have a space where there's someone coming in once a month and checking in, or supporting the people who are willing to go out there and do it. I think that's one of my passions, is let's get what people need so that they can feel autonomous and built up and developed to do this on their own. And so I think when we plant gardens, if we can facilitate, okay, let's continue the healing process by keeping this garden growing and by building up our people, we're only building our community stronger. And it just is a win-win for all. So that's an area I think that also needs to be addressed.
And one way to think about this, and this, we know it works. The good, we're pretty good people. We want to help people. People see the benefit, but ultimately, why do assisted living facilities have to have a CTRS or an activity director at their facility? And it's because it's been legislated. It's because the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services says you have to have one of these 2 people here. And so the same thing could be, we know this is beneficial, but you think about how do we advocate to legislatures about and Congress and Senate and state and federal levels of saying, look, people in assisted living facilities are going to have better lives. It's going to cost us less money. It's going to improve their outcomes. We need to require to have a horticultural therapist at every assisted living facility in the country, and that's a long fight. That's a big fight. There's dollars and money and political.
That's that political one. Yeah, I was talking about. Yeah. If
you legislate that, and you're going to have to prove it.
Yeah.
You've got something that starts a trend that could potentially be more longer lasting than just, we have a great activity director that sees the value in this. And so those are some things that could happen too. And our associate, the AHTA and other professions, they did a lot of advocating and advocacy and political work back in the 80s when they had some funding for a program about vocational training in horticultural therapy. But since that time, that kind of has fallen away, and because it has to do with cost and numbers. And one thing I say a lot is, and this is I learned from a previous job that was advocating for people with limb loss, is that if you go to your congressman or your senator and you say, hey, this is important, one of the first questions they're going to want to know is, well, how many people do you represent? And if you represent 500 people versus I represent 15,000 people as professionals, they're going to listen to the larger group. And so that's something too, and I always encourage people to be involved with the National Association, AHTA, and regional groups and local networking groups, because that's how we build numbers, and that's how we can have a bigger constituency to say this is valuable, and then we can go to multiple senators and multiple states and really see a bigger impact.
I think
and there's
though
lots
too
of
in a
free
political. I'm sorry,
no,
Alicia.
there's
You go
lots
ahead.
of free different groups too
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
you can join if you're just interested in finding out more about horticultural therapy and kind of getting a flavor of what's going
Yeah.
on. Here in California, I joined one group that was free. I joined another group in another state and spent $20 for the year.
Hmm.
Just to get an idea of their monthly meetings. They are some
Yeah.
of the kindest people
Yeah.
in those meetings, because they're not doing this for the money.
Yeah.
They're doing this because of the heart. So
Hmm.
just an encouragement.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing too, and I would say this in more of a on the say the dealing the political level of it all and that sort of stuff. I think maybe what would be beneficial maybe for to get it in a wider sense of being seen is maybe to narrow it down just a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's get every I mean, and my idea would be this, right? Let's set up find one state we think we could influence, one governor, some representatives in that state, that sort of thing. Let's organize all of the gardening groups and different nurseries and anybody who's affiliated with gardening, nature, hiking groups, whatever, and just get them to sign on to something.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what you're saying, Derrick, is perfectly right. It's
Yeah.
about how many numbers you have behind you. So if you can get enough organizations that are involved in gardening, nature, and these sort of things behind you in one place, one state, and we can just nail down one, a couple of senators and state senators and congressmen and one governor, and we can get one state to do that, because we see this a lot, right? With all sorts of other aspects of legislation and things like that, that a state will kind of be the forefront of things.
Yeah.
I'm here in Oregon. We've done that before. I'm not going to talk about some of the issues, but ultimately we've done that. We've been a leading state to, do certain things and start off and do some stuff. And maybe that's just really what it is. Let's narrow the focus. Let's get one place to take this seriously and then lead the way from there. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to segue, and I need Derrick, I need
Yes.
your help with this information.
Absolutely.
There is a conference for horticultural therapy that comes in the fall, and this year it will be online. So every other year it's online or in person. In 2 years it's going to be in San Diego. So Derrick, you want to tell us about that, and maybe you can link up to that so that people, if they want to come to the conference.
Sure.
Absolutely. Let us know what the conference is called or where we can find it online, and I'm sure we can get a link put into our chat here soon.
It's the American Horticultural Therapy has a conference every year, and a couple years ago we switched to this virtual every other year, and really was a way to help reach more people, because I love going to conferences in person, and as a therapist, that's a healing thing for myself to really be physically with everybody that it feels the same thing, but it's expensive. And so when I was on the board of AHJ, that's one of the discussions we had, is like, we want to be more accessible. And so it is a virtual conference. And what we saw, I think 2 years ago when they had that one, there was a lot of people attending, probably at least double or more than would attend the in-person conference, because, it's much, much cheaper. So it's the American Horticultural Therapy Association. I can send you a link to the conference. It's in October. I'm looking real quick at that. And October 9th through 11th.
I think Sonny just got a hold of that. 9th through 11th, right? Yeah.
Yes. And so even if you're not wanting to go get a degree or get, a certification, but this sounds interesting to you, and even as a gardener, we have a lot of master gardeners that attend because they find the value in this. So check it out. Also, AHJ does have some monthly things, webinars. There's a California group, California Horticultural Therapy Network. There's a bunch of those, and you can find those on AHJ's website at the top. I think they still list the regional groups. They have some stuff that are free and some things for paid memberships for different groups. But, that's another way just to start learning and getting to know each other and know other people that have similar interests. So it's a great way to make connections.
Yeah, I definitely want to check that out myself too, for sure. So yeah, that's great.
And I think as you as gardeners are out in your garden, you're learning things for your own heart the whole time. So I would bring a journal out with you while you're gardening. And as you're digging, pulling up weeds, as you're picking lavender for tea later, as you're doing the things, as you're getting potatoes, as I see in the chat, um, as you're doing those things, they all relate somehow to your life. And start putting applications or start exploring with curiosity how those things actually speak to your heart. And those are the kinds of things that you can use when you're gardening. You can use as you're teaching gardening, as you're on your own YouTube channels. Start implementing some of those strategies of bringing to life the garden into yourself and being present.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you even, Alicia, you might those encourage people to do that. They might even be writing the next book about the healing aspects of gardening, not even realize it by just journaling about it and then realizing, hey, this is something other people might be interested in too. So.
Yeah. Again, kind of going back to that idea I was talking about, as gardeners, we just kind of find those moments eventually in our gardening experience where we're just kind of like, wow, wait a minute. There's more to this than just growing food or the flowers or the beauty I'm creating and all of that sort of stuff. I'm actually, internally, feeling what, this garden's given back to me. And it's just so amazing ultimately. And like I said, seals the deal for a lot of people. Again, I want to kind of get into some of these avenues again too, because I'm always fascinated with, where and look, gardens are healing in general, as we say, but when we look at certain places, it's just interesting. Like I mentioned, my aunt and her facility, adult care facility she lived in at the time. We've mentioned like nursing homes, things like that. But healing can be looked at in different aspects as well too, through say preventative measures in sense too, because one of the things I think is interesting that I see more and more of are community gardening programs for at-risk folks in cities, whether they're teens or maybe young adults or those sort of things like that too, right?
Yeah.
And then the big one is that that's at-risk preventative care, but what about aftercare for someone who's getting into that kind of life in cities and things like that? And one of the things that I've always really been fascinated about since I first learned about them are prison gardens. You know what I mean? So here we are, two different sides of this spectrum, right? Preventative care for at-risk teens and young adults, and then post-care, I suppose, for those who've already gotten put into the system, right? And can you speak to that a little bit, Derrick, and some of those sort of things about that go on in those sort of aspects of gardening and the sort of connection that folks are finding with nature after and living in such a difficult type of lifestyle?
Very good. Yeah. So, first with this at risk, in urban settings, particularly, there's research that shows community gardens and areas that have green space in urban settings have lower crime rates. And a lot of that has a lot to do with, let's think about how we feel about ourselves. And if we're feeling really bad about ourselves and we're in a rundown part of town, we're not going to feel pride in that space. We're not going to feel community. And so gardening as a way to bring that in. I went to a conference several years ago with the Youth Gardening Symposium, and they had a group from a program up in Charleston, West Virginia called the Scratch Project. And it was an extension program where they worked with urban youth and a community garden. And it was really about health and nutrition education. But one of the things they noticed was that they said that they could draw a circle around their community garden, and in that circle there was less gun violence. And some of the things they noticed were the older folks, the older adults that couldn't physically garden, they'd sit on the front porch looking at the garden, and vandalism reduced because when they saw somebody coming by trying to vandalize it, they called them out. And so one of the things in particularly in America, I know we have lost a sense of community. We don't talk to our neighbors. We don't see people. We don't sit on the front porch. So gardening has a way to bring that together, and it has a way to beautify the space, but also have those impacts and really connect with at-risk youth. I did a program through AmeriCorps many years ago, but I was working in a middle school, and we were building a garden, and I was working with the school, and this was a urban school. And who did they give me to work in the garden? So they gave me the students that they didn't want in their class because they were always in trouble. They were always talking. They were hassling the teacher. So I got those students, and we went outside and we put a garden in, and we were out there working and building the garden. And it was around the track, and their track. The students came from the gym. We're doing gym time, walking around, and these kids that were, they were challenging. But the first thing they did is their friends came around. They're like, "Hey, look what I'm doing! I'm building this garden over here." So that's the kind of thing is they're connecting with something that they're doing. They're putting value in that. They're not going to come mess that up, and their friends aren't going to come mess it up. And they built pride out of that. So that is certainly one way to prevent potentially other violence and other things going on in communities and building community. And then
easy skill building for younger folks as well too. So it's just like a really like, oh, I can do this. Yeah. Kind of, and that's something that's really great for a young person as well too, to initially feel success in something. And gardening is so easy to in trouble.
People are always yelling at them, but they see success. A group that some folks might want to look at, and they presented at our conference a couple years ago it's called the Giving Grove. They're based out of Missouri, Kansas City, but they build urban orchards, and they have similar these kinds of connections and programs. This is not horticultural therapy, but it is that therapeutic element, connections to people. And then you'd mentioned prisons. And so there is research. There are groups, particularly I know some programs in California that shows that prisoners, people that get released, that have a job after being incarcerated, are less likely to recommit an offense and go back in. So it's reducing recidivism in those populations. And so there are programs out there. Rikers Island, New York, the New York Botanical Society has a program at Rikers Island, the state penitentiary. There's groups in California. There's several other groups around the country. They are training people using horticulture, and these people are getting jobs outside once they're released, and they're less likely to come in. The one program in California literally can document the amount of dollars they're saving the state because of this. And so it's, we have the therapeutic element where there's some connections to how do we deal with, the crime that I committed and who I am as a person and how to manage that and work through that. But then there's also this vocational element, and vocation and work is really an important part of our own mental health, having something to contribute, and horticulture is a way to do that.
And then, coming back to the idea of building skills now too, for folks who probably didn't have as much access to skill building throughout things, you know what I mean? So here,
and Derrick has put together programs, right, Derrick, of actual vocational settings for youth, and especially those particularly with some special needs or some special things going on. And there's been research also with vocational ways of helping people. So what are some of those at the University of Tennessee, I believe?
Yeah, so we do a program that's we have two groups right now. It's a 3-week and a 5-week program, and they're teens who have disabilities. Some have autism, some have Down syndrome, some have intellectual disability, and so this is our 3rd year of doing that. And we're not doing research. We are doing assessments and kind of seeing how things grow at the beginning, how they improve. And the first year we had the program, it was 1-day pilot, and we asked the parents, what did you get? What did your child get out of this? And we had one parent who had a son who had autism, and they said, my son typically just engages in repetitive speech throughout the day. On the way home, he was more extemporaneous and more like talking about his day, and very, very, he was engaged. We stimulated his mind cognitively, and he was talking about what he learned. This year's program, we had a participant who had autism, who again often has some repetitive speech pieces that they state. And I was talking with another participant, and we were standing together, and we were. This was in a break time, but we do gardening, we do breaks, we kind of like a work day. And I was talking about a trip I took last summer to the beach with my family. And that participant he looks at me in the eye after that saying that. He said, "I'm glad you had a good time at the beach." And I almost start crying, to see that, he's listening and he's actually processing what I'm saying, and he is engaging with me. And that a lot of times if you're not used to working with someone who has a disability, you might see somebody out in public and you might make an assumption about their abilities and who they are and all this. What we see is like we're really identifying and learning about these people, and they're growing because of this, and they're getting those kinds of growth experiences that are important, that are not only socially but also for work and just our overall well-being.
Awesome. Let's see here real quick. Just dropped in a question, Shawnee. Awesome question. Are there particular plants that are most commonly used or most effective in therapeutic gardens? That's a great question.
I think it's the purpose that you would want for the plants. So if you wanted something that's more perennial, more hands off, you would do some really easy herbs that all people can touch and no reactions to, like oregano and rosemary and lavender.
Sensory ones too, right?
Yeah,
That you get from those.
And those are all sensory type things that people could then eat. So making sure this is something I learned from the program with Derrick, is non-toxic. Make sure that whatever you put in the garden can be ingested by accident, because a lot of times the clients that we have are testing it out sensory wise all the way around. And so it needs to be safe. So the first thing I like to make sure is that the garden has the needs met. That if it's something that they want a vegetable garden and they want to see things growing, or they want the participants to actually plant the seeds, then I make sure there are spaces for bush beans for the summer, so that in 55 days they can actually see what they've produced by just a seed. And if one garden I made sure there were 120 bulbs that we planted together in October in my area. And for the last 3 years, those bulbs have come up in the spring we did it in 3 different layers, 3 different lines. We talked about seasonality. We talked how they all have their own timing. And then they came up for about 3 months. And we know that we'll never have to plant that area out again. We'll have to, thin it, but it's something that brings beauty in the spring that they know they planted in the fall, that they wait for, and it'll come back. So there's different purposes for different things that you plant.
Something I think look forward to. Yeah.
And I think it's important to think about this is what makes it therapy versus therapeutic is assessment, so who are your clients? What are we learning about them? What are their goals? What are our goals? And then that helps you decide, okay, plant selection. What plants do we want to use? Let's say we're working with a group of people who have obesity. Well, and they come to me, one of their goals is to eat healthier. Well, then I'm not going to pick ornamental plants. I'm going to pick vegetables and fruits and those things as my plants for my program because that'll match up to the goals that they have. So, and so that's also important. What are the goals? And that helps guide. And also, where do you live, right? Because in each part of the country, we have a little bit different growing environments. And it's also an important element. Make sure we grow for where we live.
Yeah.
I think also all year you brought up a great point, Derrick, where how can you, something else in the classes that I took from UT with Derrick was, what do you do in the wintertime? How are you continuing a horticultural therapeutic program, even when it is freezing outside? For senior living homes, how are you going to bring green in? It's not always going to be outside, where seniors can handle the cold outside. Or if you are scheduled to come at this hour and it's raining, how are you going to be outside? So I think setting up and knowing that you're going to set up like a seed starting station, have one wall that is going to be the seed starting station for whatever area you're in. And it's always, something is always growing. Something is always being added to, something is always being checked on. I think being able to have participants be able to take care of is such a therapeutic thing. Taking care of these plants. What are these plants telling us? What are the
Yeah.
leaves saying to us? Put your finger in the soil. How is it feeling? What is going on in the atmosphere? And that can happen indoors with indoor plants.
Mm-hmm.
That can happen with succulents.
Yeah.
That can happen outdoors. That can happen with that can happen with a grow station inside. So maybe whatever facility site buys one of those amazing grow stations with the pods, and you learn
Right.
how, as a community, you learn how to create your own pods so it doesn't cost so much money. And you learn the seeds that you want to put by finding seeds in different areas that start indoors well. And so there's some really fun things that you can do in both the areas, inside and out. And I think as you're developing a program, you want to think of in and out.
Exactly. That's a great point. Yeah, that's really essential, and also really essential. Maybe more based on where you kind of do live too. There's a lot more year-round gardening in the South, capabilities of doing that stuff. So maybe they can stay outdoors most of the time. But in the North, yeah, you're definitely gonna have to come inside, and you're definitely gonna have to find ways to be able to do those same things indoors as well too. I mean, those are some great ideas too, because again, as I was pointing there, this is my winter. I got a plant station and seed starting station just right across the way that y'all can't see, and that's how I keep myself occupied during the winter time as well for my gardening when it's a little cold and I got to be inside. I try to get out as much as I can, but there's a lot of indoor horticultural therapy I got to do here. Right. Let's see here. Serena asked this question too about the program. She says, does the University of Tennessee have a volunteer requirement for your students? Says they're called volunteers, but yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have a volunteer requirement, but a lot of our students do have. There's some ways as a student can become a volunteer and get credit for that throughout the program. But that has a lot to do with our history of as a state and how we sent volunteers to the Mexican-American War back, the Alamo and all that stuff. So that's kind of
really
volunteers. But typically over the course of this country, the people from the state of Tennessee tend to volunteer a lot to help other parts of the country. So that's kind of how we got our nickname.
Right. Okay. I get it. I see. We're called that. Now I'm getting the question. All right. Thank you. All right. Excellent. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. But so let's take that as a jumping off point. Let's before we, finish up today, let's really talk about this program specifically, and what it entails and what it's about. And again, this is your guys' program. Are there other programs as well too, maybe? And are they similar? This sort of thing, right?
So we do have, AHTA, American Horticultural Therapy Association, has an accreditation process for horticultural therapy programs. And we have about 9 different ones throughout the country. And I say we a lot. I am not on the board anymore, but I was on the board for about 6 years. So, as a profession, I feel like, one of the things is these programs, I know all the professors, I know all the people teaching these programs, they're all amazing people. Some programs are in person, some are online. And so all are variable about the same cost because it's the cost for college tuition. Our program is a 9-hour certificate where you get 3 courses, Intro to Horticultural Therapy Program Management, and Horticultural Therapy Programming Techniques. Ours is accelerated, so it takes 21 weeks. It is an intense program where
it is very intense. It's very, very intense.
I know. I was gonna ask you about your experience for sure.
As I was taking UCLA classes too, I mean, I can testify. Yep.
So we put a 15 to 16 week semester into 7 weeks, and that is hard. And I do require a lot of my students, and it is challenging. One of my former students said it's like drinking through the fire hose because we are getting all the information in. So ours is asynchronous, so which means that you don't have to be in person or check in at a certain time. There's a lot of recorded sessions, and we have some video interactive sessions where we try to get students to interact with other students that way to kind of build the networking opportunities amongst professionals. Other programs have, you've got classes that they meet, so often in person and some online. Some are fully just on campus at the school. So AHJ's website, if you check out the Education and Careers page, you can look at that. I encourage you to check out all the programs or more than one program if you're interested. I always have students emailing me that I've got an intern right now that is awesome intern. She ended up going through another program because she felt like that was the format she wanted. But she came back and she's here on site with our Sow to Grow program, and she's doing an amazing job. So I've worked with interns also throughout from different programs too. So and my goal is to build the profession. And so and for anybody here and former students, my door is always open because I really want people to take what I'm teaching, but also take what they're passionate about and help them connect to turn that into a career for them and a profession, and also just build who we are as a professional horticultural therapy.
Yeah. And I can definitely attest to Derrick's open door policy. I think I probably bugged him and asked him more questions than probably most of his students. I'm just assuming. And he was always so kind and so wonderful about responding. And
professors love to talk to students. And so I appreciate Alicia and always looking to talk to people. So
yeah, that's wonderful. So yeah, again too. So Alicia, like you're saying, this experience of this program, again, you say is pretty intensive and all of that sort of stuff. What was that experience like for you ultimately, and really, how do you feel coming out of it all?
Well, I feel like the part 1, the part 2, part 3 of the 3 classes, each one built on the next class, because the program is built so that by the end of the time you have written a grant, you have written at least 6 lessons that you would have done in an HT program somewhere for a workshop of some sort. You have all of these, you have done a proposal, you start getting a mix of what it's going to feel like to propose, hey, this is a workshop I'd like to do for you, and this is how, and this is why, and this is what I would do for you. Being able to help market yourself and understand how to get out there in the real world. So it is an action-packed 3 classes because he is trying to push all the information into those spaces in 7 weeks for each class and help you propel forward so that you have a jumping off point, is how I see it.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. And again, too, I think more and more folks out there. So I'm hoping that folks are watching this or getting something from it, and maybe see that this is a direction that they would like to take too, as well. I mean, that's really, one of the cool things I think is, and we touched on it just a little bit too, is that, education and gardening, there's lots of cool professions, when it comes to gardening and growing and doing all that sort of stuff. And if you're looking for a profession that's in gardening and growing and doing that sort of stuff, I couldn't think of anything better now than a growing profession of horticultural therapy, and become a part of this, this growing group of folks out there, fighting to help heal people with nature, and again too, taking us back to really where I think that it ultimately it shows through the conversation, is that our loss of connection with a lot of that stuff is where we are at with that sort of stuff. So it becomes important that we find ways to connect with it, and again too, just really amazing. When we think about the stories and the research and all of these sort of possibilities and where this can go and all of that, is just really awesome to think about. And I really hope that folks out there do take maybe some time or something like that, or we figure out, again too, we touched on earlier about how can we approach this to get it taken more seriously, or maybe get this as a serious profession and all that sort of stuff. So again, I really appreciate you guys taking your time to come here and talk with me about all of this and just go through all of this stuff. And in fact, I really think we could dig into so much more and talk about all more aspects and stories of how these sort of things go and stuff. So I'd really love to someday reconnect and be able to get in and talk about this just a little bit more. And so really thank you all for doing this and talking about this. But I do want to ask you guys one more thing real quick before we let you go, though, too. and is as well as let us know again too about yourself and your program and that sort of stuff, or Alicia, you and what you're doing and as well. But tell us a little bit about what's going on right now. I mean, you guys got gardens, right? I mean, we're a garden
Absolutely.
show. I want to hear about your gardens, what you guys are growing right now, how things are going, and how you guys are how things are doing this year in this season.
Okay.
And yeah, go with you, Alicia. I'm sorry, I gotta remember to direct people. There we go. This way, Alicia.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that sounds great. I had a gopher attack, so I've had so many gophers in my garden, and I have obviously netting underneath each of my beds, but getting rid of gophers has been the big thing, so that everything is safe. So 9 have been taken care of in the last month and a half.
Oh my.
I had about 100 garlic that got all eaten in the month of February through April, and I was like, what is happening? So I'm like, I didn't realize they could eat garlic. Like, they wanted to eat garlic. This family of gophers has. So I am a little late in starting, but everything is growing. Eggplants, Japanese eggplants are my favorite. Shishito peppers, I'm having them every day. I fry them up just right.
Excellent.
My 40 tomato plants, and we've got my pomegranates are looking great. I've got about 20 fruit trees, and they're all looking pretty good, even through cold, with some of the limes and lemons. So that's what I have going. I know it is very serious gopher time with 100. I mean, I had 100 and they just kept disappearing. And so I covered the bed thinking, is it coming from above? Because I just couldn't tell. And it was coming from below. So I think I made them stronger by eating all that garlic.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you give them some good health benefits there.
Adam, you're having a hard time too with that too. I get it. Yes, exactly. It's been crazy. So we have had major infestation of lots of different animals, and usually we get rid of one gopher and we're great. We're safe. But I actually helped produce a lot of families this year with garlic.
Wow. Yeah. Garlic's one of my favorite things to grow. I grow a lot of it every year.
I was so sad. Not one.
And again, too, it's a long process. Again, too, one of those things that you're talking about. We're planting things in the fall, and we get to anticipate it down later in the season. I mean, 9 months. Yes. 9 months of like trying to get something growing. It's so great and awesome. And then to watch them just go one by one by one. Did you get any out of them all? I mean, you had to set up.
I got none. I even planted onions thinking, oh, this is not all the onions gone. Because I planted those in March. Done. Gone.
Oh
so,
my gosh.
Yeah, now everything is growing and I haven't had a problem, and we're just keeping a watch over everything, all the holes. So.
Oh my. Yikes, I feel for you guys who got to deal with all that animal pressure for sure. I don't have as much of it where I grow in my spaces. I get a lot of pest, insect pressure and stuff, but the animal pressure is the toughest. It's the worst. Oh, I hear so much of it from people. How about you, Derrick? How things growing for you? You got some garden. Do you have your own personal garden? I know you have the university gardens and that sort of stuff, but you also have your own personal garden?
So yeah, we have we have a therapeutic garden that we got from the National Garden Bureau. It was a grant a couple of years ago. And so we have tons of stuff growing in there. Our Sutter Grow program, so all these participants have planted it and are maintaining that. But at home, I do also. My problem that I have now in my vegetable garden is I've got a lot of maturing trees that keep getting taller, and I'm not getting quite enough sunlight, I think. So I'm not getting the stuff to ripen. So I got to existential. What am I going to do? Do I remove a tree to get more sunlight, or do I do something different? But tomatoes are just starting to come in. Our May was the wettest May on history in the last 50 years. So the temperatures were cool. That rain is recharging our groundwater. I'm happy about that. But the also thing is
oversaturation though.
Not really. I think it has dried out now, so I haven't had too much problem. I was able to grow our lettuce a lot longer because of the heat was down, and so it wasn't quite as bitter. Now I've got some of the lettuce I left, and I'm going to start harvesting the seed from those, and we've got some kale and stuff that I got to start harvesting soon too.
Yeah, that's good. Good seed saving too. That's great as well, especially lettuce. Those are just, those seeds don't like to last very long. So, you know,
Yeah.
I always make sure I just keep a couple of those heads of lettuce and let them bolt and let them go to seed so that I can save. And then they'll spread themselves around too and do all that sort of stuff. So I'll have them popping up all over the place as well too. But yeah, lettuce is one of those ones I definitely make sure I like to save the seeds from. That and radishes.
And bok
One,
choy. I mean,
bok choy
hello,
is
bok
great.
choy. Oh,
Yeah.
the flowers that come off of bok choy are my favorites.
Yeah. And it's
They're
not hard to get them
yellow.
to go to seed either. Spinach, not hard to go to
Yeah.
seed. But yeah.
Well, then
Just
I've got
raise the
some
temperature a
cilantro.
couple of degrees and they're ready to throw out seed. That's for sure.
And then I've got some
Definitely.
cilantro just grew out of my compost, I think. So we got
Yeah.
Love that.
You know, one of my favorite things, I was just mentioning radishes again too. I love about seed saving and all of that too. And I talk about this too. And I always love to see if people do this. But have you ever grown your radishes out to harvest young seed pods? They're delicious. Okay, so here's the thing I do every year now is I will save a couple of radishes and let them go to seed, right? Usually I only need one if I'm going to save seed, right? But I let a couple of them go because, you know, 2 or 3 of those, I'm going to let them go to seed, but I'm going to harvest all these young little seed pods like little beans. And those go great inside of a salad, stir fry, these sort of things. It gives this little radish taste. They're really, really good. So you get a second crop from your radishes now. And then, you know, then you take those ones and those 2 and you let your one and you save the seeds. And then I get my third crop because I save a lot of seed is then I'll have microgreens through the winter time, right? And then we get to reseed the next year and start all over again.
Beautiful.
Isn't
Love
that
the
awesome?
cycle.
I love it.
Beautiful.
I love it. That's great. And again, you guys, this is so wonderful. Again, what's a great conversation today. And thanks for really bringing it. You know, we really talked about some really good, serious stuff. And I mean, I try to touch on some good, deep stuff here and there when we're talking about gardening, but this was a really great one, you know, and really kind of a great way to kind of segue into these coming weeks. We've also got our good friend, Dr. Jeff now. He's actually a medical doctor. His profession's delivering babies, actually, more so, but he found, gardening as medicine. You know, he did a talk at National Heirloom Exposition this last year talking about gardening as medicine. And this is kind of his thing now. He's been really on, and he's come on the show a couple of times. He can come on regularly now, so we can talk about gardening as medicine as a regular conversation. But yeah, something I really love digging into here and talking about is really this healing aspect of the garden. Yeah. And again, too, one last chance here for each of you guys to say goodbye to everybody and say, let us know where you're at, that sort of thing. I know you in your program and stuff. Usually I'm talking to most people who are really out there sharing and creating videos and doing that sort of stuff when it comes to gardening, all that sort of stuff. But one last time to say goodbye to everybody there. And again, thank you guys so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, Alicia.
Thank you. And if anybody needs to get a hold of me, Instagram, Create My Garden, you can DM me. I will definitely check. I'm on Facebook at Create My Garden, and then the YouTube. So I've slowed down in all my production as my head and my heart are going into a new space with horticultural therapy and not needing to market that, but instead needing to sense where I'm supposed to be next. So reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. And I do have a website that's different than my Create My Garden. It's lifegivinggarden.com, and it is for horticultural therapy. And if you want to get on my monthly email, I don't email much because I am putting out some things in the future for YouTube on how do you use your garden, how do you grow for your heart, kind of a thing, and also some blog posts and stuff. But as I am just figuring out where I'm at, that's where you can find me.
Excellent. Yeah. And again, too, I'll just say, as you both did, you're very open about talking about and doing this sort of stuff. And I'm sure if your gardeners out there are catching this show now or later or anything like that, definitely reach out. I'm sure Alicia will help you find a way to horticultural therapy if that's something you're really interested in as well, too. And then, of course, we've got the man, the professor. I gotta put this way, the professor, Derrick Stowell, that we can turn to as well to learn and start that journey towards a horticultural therapy career.
Yeah, and the best way to get a hold of me is just through email right now. So it's dstowell, my last name, at utk.edu. I did see somebody ask about how do you get a horticultural therapy garden program in your own town. I think Shawnee Groves did that.
Yeah,
AHT
yeah.
does have a search engine where you can look for therapists, HTRs there. You can also email the HTA office. You can email me too, and I can look up and try to connect you with people that I know too, because I know people all over the place. So if you do, you're looking for a specific town or something, just send me an email and I'll respond. After this week, I'm not going to respond much this week because we got our program running, but after that, I'll have a lot more flexibility in my time. So.
Absolutely.
And really quickly, Derrick, when is the program for UT, the deadline to apply, and when does it start for the next session?
The next one will start this fall. The deadline has passed for this year for applications, but there are some. But if you're interested in it, just contact me. There's some things that might be changing too with the program a little bit, and so I can kind of touch base with those that might be interested in that and kind of what that might look like. So.
Yeah. So contact him today. Contact him this next week.
Yeah. Get in now if you want to get in now.
If you want to start for the fall for the 21 weeks to get it done this next year, I highly encourage you.
Yeah, definitely do it too. I mean, we need more folks who are out there who have that sort of, ability, to be able to connect with people like that too, to take on this sort of profession and do these sort of things as we work to hopefully build this into something that we can take seriously. I really like this, the discussion a little bit earlier about how do we get someone to take this, like maybe focusing in on a state. I mean, we got to get on this somehow. We'll talk more and more about that again too as we move towards the future, because this, like I said, I think there's more in this conversation we can have, and I would definitely love to have you guys back to really kind of talk, go over this and talk about all this stuff even more too, because again, I really feel it's important, and it's been a big part of my life, and I know a lot of other gardeners as well feel this and know this. So I talk about sealing the deal earlier, so again, thank you so much for being here. And again, everybody, go check out their links, and I'll try to get some updated links as well too. I know Jay's probably dropping some things as well there. So again, awesome to have you guys, and thanks for being here. And I'm gonna finish up the show here, and I'll see you guys in just a few minutes.
All right.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye.
Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
All right, everybody. Again, another great show. What a really fantastic conversation about horticultural therapy. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this for so long, and there's so much more to talk about. So we'll definitely have to have them back again so we can just really just dig into this stuff even more next time for sure. But again, thank you to Derrick Stowell, Professor at University of Tennessee there, and Alicia from Create My Garden for spending their time with us today. And definitely check out links down below, everybody. And also too, I mentioned just a little bit ago as well, don't forget to set your calendar for our monthly gardening book club that we announced this last week. We've got our new book coming up for July, and our new book is The Cool Season Gardener with Bill Thornes. So on the 3rd Sunday of July, we're going to hang out right here on the Sunday Sunday Edition and talk all about this really great book with the author, Mr. Bill Thornus, join with us then as well too next week. Now, I talked about this earlier, little caveat. I mean, I know I say that we're here every Saturday and Sunday, but sometimes there's a week and sometimes there's something that's just a little bit more important to do. And that's the case for this next Saturday. June 28th is my granddaughter's very first birthday. And I'm going to go ahead and play this. I did this yesterday. All right, everybody, look who we're here with. I got my granddaughter, Layla. Hi, Layla. Say hi. Yeah. So guess what? Next Saturday on our show day is Layla's very first birthday. Yes, it's her first birthday. So we're not going to have a show. So we're going to take the day off and I'm going to go hang out with my granddaughter for her first birthday. But all of you can still join in on the show and join in on the chat, as we'll keep the chat open as always. And hopefully we'll see all of you guys on next Sunday's show. What? Oh, right on, right on. Yep. Next Saturday, no show, open chat. And I got to say there again, right at the very end of there, she grabbed hold of the Monstera. She got a good chunk of it. It didn't rip or anything, didn't harm the plant, but boy, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. But anyways, yeah, no show next Saturday. I'm gonna go hang out for my granddaughter's birthday, but we do have the chat open for everybody, and we will be back for next Sunday edition of the show. We're gonna have our good friend Christopher Bransdahl joining us from the mountains of Norway, where he gardens up there, and our good friend Kangstar from the Kangstar channel and the pepper lover community joining us for their, I guess we can call it almost their regular, almost every other month get together with us. Kang and Christopher are like my good friends, original live streamers. Those guys were the first guys and first guests I ever had on a live stream here on the show many, many years ago. And it's always great to hang out with them and see what's growing on in their gardens. So we'll get together next Sunday and we'll hang out with Christopher and Kang for our next Sunday edition. So all right, everybody, as we end the show here, definitely click that like button if you haven't had a chance to already. Click the subscribe button, hit the bell notification to be notified of all of our upcoming videos and live streams. And yeah, keep an eye out for videos. I did just put out a new video on our pepper growing series. You'll want to go and check that out if you haven't yet. I'm talking about hardening off our plants and all of that sort of stuff, or transplanting plants and all that. So you'll definitely want to go back and check out that video. And we've got a garden journal coming up here for you this week as well too. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for that. And also definitely go and check out all of the links down below for our guests and our social media and all of that. And again, thank you all so much for being here. Just another wonderful weekend getting to hang out with all of you here on the Urban Gardener channel and the Let's Get Growing show. And I look forward to seeing all of you again this next Sunday. So I'll see all of you then.